Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sewing up MODA Blockheads 5, week 9, block 8. That's a mouthful. This is exciting, getting exciting because this is the second to last block. Next week, block 9 will be the last one for part 1 of MODA Blockheads. Then there's a break until January, which will start part 2. Now, you can save all these blocks and put them in with the part 2 blocks, or you can make 2 quilts. You can make a smaller quilt this time and a larger quilt next time. Next time it's supposed to be 30 blocks. So if you save all their blocks, you'll have 40 blocks, or you can do what I'm doing and make a smaller quilt this time. I think they had a couple other options too, a bunting and I can't remember, maybe a table runner. There was a couple other options they had for this time, or a lap quilt. Or you can save them for part 2 and put them all together and make one big huge quilt. Although 30 blocks is already a good size quilt, so 40 is going to be a huge quilt. So obviously I'm using Christmas fabric, so I'm going to finish mine this time into a lap quilt, and then I'm going to start with a whole new fabric line in January. I haven't decided yet which fabric line I'm going to use. I was actually thinking of Peachy Keen by Rotary. I have a fat quarter bundle of it, but I've been looking at the fabric and more I'm leaning to use that for another project. So I'm thinking I'm gonna pick another fabric line. And I just got back from Quilt Market in Houston, and I got to shop a sample spree for MODA, and I got all kinds of fat quarter bundles. So I'm very lucky that I have a bunch of things to pick from. So hopefully by next week, I'll be able to tell you guys which fabric line I'm gonna use in January, because a bunch of you have asked which fabric I'm gonna use next time. Okay, well, with that being said, let's get started. This week's block, let me grab it really quick, is called Community Star by Robin Pickens. Now, I was over at the MODA Facebook group, and I saw a lot of people saying this is a very busy block and asking if there's an alternative block. Typically, there's not an alternative block unless it's a technique that maybe isn't a traditional technique like foundation paper piecing or applique. So I don't think there's any alternative blocks. It is a busy block, but depending on your fabric choices, you can calm it down and it won't be so busy. This is not a difficult block. I've already looked at it a little bit, but it is complex. There's a lot of steps to get through this block, so this is not going to be a block that you finish in, 15 minutes. So just keep that in mind. You might want to do a little bit of it, come back, or set aside a good amount of time to get everything cut and sew this block. I think this block will probably take at least an hour. I did pre-sew a little bit of it before I show you guys how to do it, just to save some time, because you're not going to watch an hour-long block video. But I will show you the basics of the block, and then I will put it all together and show you the whole block done. But I think it is going to take at least an hour to do this block. There's, like I said, it's not hard, but there are lots of components, lots of pieces to put together. So let's get started. Okay, so for the first part of this block, we're going to make the corner units. And there are 4 of those, of course, 1 for each corner. And they're going to look something like this when they're all done. It's going to look a little bit different depending on your fabric choice, of course. But this is what mine ended up looking like. I used all, like, my background. This for me was fabric C, and these are fabric E. So this is a fairly simple unit. It's just like I said earlier, each unit that we're going to do is lots of steps. That's the hard part, is that it's going to take a while. So the first thing you're going to want to do is for the middle of that unit, so this section right here, is sew these 3 pieces together, whatever colors you're using. I have 2 background squares, and then I have a C square right here. So I'm going to sew those together first. And then after I sew these together, I'm going to go ahead and make my half square triangles. There's going to be a half square triangle here and a half square triangle here. So I drew a line on the back of my fabric. I'm going to join those pieces together, and I'm going to sew on both sides of that line about a 1/4 inch, and then we'll trim that down and put all this together. So let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is that center section. Pretty straightforward, just sewing it together like you'd sew some patchwork. And like I said, I saw on the MODA Facebook group that some people were saying this is kind of a busy block. I think it can be busy depending on how many fabrics you pick, but I just picked 3 fabrics and my background. So 4 fabrics all together. And one of my fabrics, the center one here, is a white with a print on it. So I think that because I picked the white, it's going to calm it down a little bit. I could see if you used more fabrics than I did and used a bunch of bright, bold prints where it could get really busy, but also some people like that. So some people might like that busier look. So be interesting to see what all of you choose. Okay, so that's our center. I just finger pressed that to set it in place for now. I'm going to go ahead and do the half square triangle. So again, I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on either side of the line that I drew. And you're going to make 4 of these units. So what I would do is make 4 of these and do all the half square triangles and so on and so forth. Like I said, not a hard block. It's just a lot of busy work. So you're going to be pressing a lot, cutting a lot, that kind of thing. So just cut this apart on that line that you drew. You can cut it or you can use your rotary cutter, whichever. Sometimes it's easier just to cut it with scissors, at least for me. All right, I snipped that apart. Now I'm going to press these towards my darker fabric, my E fabric. You can press them either way you like. I'm pressing it that way because I have white on the other side. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my pressing pen, put some pressing solution on there, and then we'll iron all these. And after we iron these, all these pieces, we'll trim these 2 guys down. I believe they get trimmed down to 2 inches. Now I'm doing that, again, 12-inch size block. So if you're doing the smaller ones, your dimensions will be a little bit different. I love seeing all of your blocks over at the Facebook group. Really, really pretty. And some of you have been posting them on my Facebook group as well. So thank you for doing that. I love seeing those. It brings me joy to see other people's creations and I get inspired by it. So thank you for posting pictures in my group as well. And if you don't know about my group, I've got a group called Together We Sew Quilting with Stephanie Stitches on Facebook. I'll link that down below. Plus I'll link the MODA one as well. So you can post in either of those or both. I'd love to see them in mine too. Okay, so yeah, now I'm going to trim these down to 2 inches. Move these guys over. So I'm just using a regular old ruler, putting that 45-degree line right on the line that I sewed. Taking my rotary cutter. And you're just trimming off just a smidge on each side there, just a little bit. Just get our block nice and square, our unit nice and square. Okay, so that's one. We'll do this guy. I hope you all had a great week. I had a fun week. My weekend I was at Quilt Market in Houston for the trade show. I got to see a lot of MODA folks there, so that was fun. Some of the designers. One of the ladies who runs the MODA Blockheads group on Facebook. Got to meet her. So that was a lot of fun. And I got to see a bunch of the fabric lines coming up in the spring. So you guys are going to love all the fabrics coming up. They're beautiful. All right, so now I'm going to lay this out how we're going to sew it. That way I don't screw it up. So your E pieces should be opposite each other here. And then your background piece will be, rectangle will be next to your E pieces. So just keep an eye on your diagram. And I'm going to sew this one piece at a time so I don't forget where they go. Alright, so now I'm just going to give these a press. And then we can put this unit together. Okay, taking those to the sewing machine and sewing those together. Recheck that. Okay. So there are two different units for the 4-corner units. They're showing on in the instructions to sew two one way and two the other way. If you are using fabrics like I am, where you're not using a bunch of different colors, and this guy down here matches the one at the top, because some people might use two different colors, and you don't mind that your fabric seams turn in different directions. So like this block might be this way, and when you turn it to put it in the block, the seams will go this way, and then the next block the seams will go, one will be horizontal, one will be vertical. So if you don't mind that, you can actually do all 4 blocks or all 4 units the same way. If you want all your pieces to have your seams going the same direction, then you'll need to do 2 one direction and 2 the other direction. So take a peek at that in the instructions. But it's really up to you and how you feel about that. The reality is, once you get this into a quilt and get it quilted, you're not going to see that at all. So, especially after you wash your quilt and it gets that crinkle that we all know and love, you're definitely not going to see that. So, if you're okay with it, you can do all 4 the same way. It'll save you a little bit of time. Or if you need your seams all to go the same direction, then make sure you do 2 and 2. Alright, so just going to press this block. I must have been cutting something blue in the last couple days, and I don't remember what it was, because I've got blue fuzzies all over everything here. Oh well. They'll come off. Okay. Alright, so that guy is all pressed. So the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make, let's see, our sort of square in a square part of this thing. Let's see, let me grab my pieces. Here they are. I put them aside and couldn't find them. So they had us cut a background square. We'll need these guys in a minute, but they had us cut a background square or whatever color you chose. And then they had us cut some blocks and cut them in half, right? So what we're going to do is make sure, if you have 2 and 2 like I do, and not, if you have 4 of the same color, won't matter. If you have 2 different colors, which is what they show in the diagram, 2 are going to go next to each other of the same color, and 2 are going to go next to each other. So don't With this, you're more likely to try to go like that, to put two colors opposite, but that's not how they want it. They want it like this. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to score this. I'm going to fold this in half and just make some score lines here. This is how I like to do my square and a square, to make sure I get these pieces centered nicely. So I will make a crease, and then I will flip this over just to make sure I've got it the same direction. Doesn't matter which way you crease this, as long as you crease this one the same way so they nest together. So I'm going to crease this one just like this, and be careful because these triangles are on the bias. And I'm going to lay that part that I just scored right inside that square where I scored it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Excuse me. Weather's changing here, so my throat doesn't like it. So I laid where I scored this triangle right into where I scored the square. So now I have both of these directly in the center. So now I'm going to sew 1/4 inch down this side. Now I am doing this a little bit different than the instructions, so if you want to use the instructions, I will not be offended. You can follow the instructions if you like. It doesn't really matter which way you put this together, as long as ultimately you end up with a square and a square that's 3.5 inches. So I just find it easier to do, they're saying to do this side, this side, this side, this side. I find it easier to do opposites because then I can press both at the same time, open them up, and then or open them up, press them, and then do the other opposite too. So you save a little time. Instead of having to press after each side, I can just press after 2 sides. Okay, so that's the first 2. I'm going to go ahead and press these. Finger press those guys, tell them where I want them to go. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite 2 sides. So I'm going to fold it again and score it. That's just finding the center there. And again on the other side. And you can cut these dog ears off now if you want to, or you can do it when we square up this block. We're going to square this block up. So, all right. So now, score that triangle and lay it right there, just like we did the other way. And then again on the opposite side. So is anybody else having fall-like or winter-like weather yet? We got a little snow as our first snow of the season last night. It's already gone because it warmed up a little bit this afternoon and the sun came out and melted it all, but my kids were thrilled to see it. It was very chilly here last night. Last night was Halloween, and we usually get about 400 trick-or-treaters. And I don't think there were even 50 because that's how chilly it was. Nobody wanted to be out. So it was pretty much just teenagers out. My kids didn't want to go out. Okay. Just going to press these, and then we're going to trim this down. So it doesn't matter that it looks kind of funky right now with all these little dog ears sticking out, because we're going to get rid of that in a second. Okay, so now that that's pressed, I'm going to grab my ruler and my rotary cutter, and we're going to trim this down to 3.5 inches square if you're doing the 12-inch size. So I've got my rotary cutter, or I've got my ruler. I'm going to find 3.5 inches and find the center, which would be 1.75 inches. And I'm going to line that up with the center of this block. So that's there. And then I need to find 1.75 this way. So make sure you find it both directions. Take your time. You can only cut this once and then you'll have to start all over again. Nobody wants to do that. All right. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to trim off that side. Trim off that side so you can see. That's why I said you don't need to trim those dog ears, because those are going to come right off. And then I'm going to turn that around and just put this guy on the 3.5 inch mark now. Okay, there we go. You should have just all these little snips and dog ears off of there. And then you should have 4 like this. So you need to make 4 of these. After you've made those, you're going to join, let me see what piece that is, the F rectangle to whatever your outside color is. So that piece is, let's see here, the H. Whatever your H is, you're going to add your F rectangle to those. So go ahead and add it to all 4. I'm going to do that now. Okay, so I'm just going to give this a press. And once you've done all 4 of these and all 4 of your corner units, you're pretty much done with the block. It's just assembling the rows now. Done with all the components of the block, I should say. Okay, so I've got that guy pressed. I've got another one here and another one here. And then this is my center. So my center is there, my center square. And the fabrics I've chosen and decided to do these 2 fabrics the same is going to make this look like a star in the center. And then I've already sewn my bottom row together, so that's going to be down here. And then these are going to go just like that in my corner units. So I'm going to sew these 3 together. Oops. These 3 together, and then we can put all 3 rows together. And if you want to be sure not to lose your points in those square to square, sew with them upside down on top of your other fabrics. So you can see where those threads cross and not go on this side of it. That's how you keep your points. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Set those 2 aside for now. Let's do this guy. Now, if you are a fan of this block, which I am really liking this block, if you see here, this part, I don't know if you guys can see that. If you look at this part right here, if you notice, we're starting to sort of make a second star, although we're not going to make a full star because this is where the block ends. But if you made more of these blocks and put them together, just this block in a quilt, you wouldn't need any sashing in between, because then your next one would form the full star. Isn't that cool? I really love that. So if you made a bunch of these blocks, you could just put them together in a quilt, no sashing needed, and there you have it. Really neat thing about this block. Okay, so there's that one, and that one. All right, now I'm going to press these rows, and then we'll get this whole thing together. I really love this secondary star. It's really kind of neat. All right, those are pressed. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that back together. And there we go. So just to play around here for a second. Yeah, see, the next block, if you did these, would be like, it would form a secondary star. I think that's really cool. Okay, I'll stop playing now. We'll put it together. That's fun. All right, I like when fun stuff like that happens. Might be a fun way to make, I don't know if I'd want to make a whole quilt out of these stars because it would take a really long time, but you could do like a table runner and create those secondary stars. That would be fun. Put like 5 blocks or something. Although a whole quilt would be fun too. It would just take a while. Right, now adding the last one. Almost done. And then we only have one more week to go. One more block to go, I should say. Probably a couple more weeks because I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and read the instructions. Reading is always good. I'm pretty sure though, I remember they said you get the finishings the week after block 9, but it could be releasing the same week as block 9. I'm not sure. Either way, I will be back for block 9. And I will also show you guys how I sewed mine together. I'm very excited to see how they did a lap quilt with only 9 blocks, because they're not super big blocks. So there must be some sashing or something involved. So, all right. there's my block. I'm gonna go give it a final press and then come back and show you guys, but I really love it. It's really pretty. 2, 1. Well, thank you so much for joining me today for MODA Blockheads 5, week 9, block 8. I had to check and make sure I said all that correctly. Here is my block. I really, really like this block. I love that these stars, if you made a bunch of these stars, are going to turn into a secondary pattern. That is really cool, and it makes me want to make some more of these and put them together. So I might do that in the future. I'm going to hang on to this one. All right, well, that's it until next week. Like I said, next week is block 9. It'll be the final block, and then for the first set, and then we'll get the finishing instructions if you're going to use these blocks to make a finished product. If not, hang on to your blocks until January. If you are making a finished product, then come back in January and join me for part 2 of Blockheads 5. That's going to be 30 blocks, so it's going to run from January to July, and we're going to be able to make a whole big quilt out of that. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be great. And I'm really actually glad that they broke it into 2 parts, gave us a break from mid-November through December, and start again in January, because I've got a lot of things going on for the holidays, as I'm sure most of you do. And that'll give us a little bit of time to do all that before we start again. Because I know when I've done block of the months in the past, or even block of the week, and they're during the holidays, I tend to get behind. So yay, I'm really glad that MODA thought about that and decided to take the break. All right, well, that's all I got. Have a great week and keep sewing. I'll see you really soon. Bye.